get your views on issues, we play you the best music. This is VOAR, the Voice of Africa Radio 94 FM, the station designed to bring the best of Africa to London.
Good evening to you and welcome to VOA, the Voice of Africa. It's Monday. The program is Inside. I have with me in the studios well-resourceful personnel to deal with issues that really matter most. Andrew Smith is in the house with me to talk about the arms campaign against armed trade in the United Kingdom, the campaign which they are mounting against the British government in involving in any way of selling arms anywhere, a country that is not safe, undemocratic country, and countries that they think that if they lay their hands on arms, they can oppress their citizens with. I have Liberal Democrat Mahmoud Faiz also in the house, who will be in loggerhead with Nigel Farage's party. The main woman is also in the house, Elizabeth, who will also be discussing major issues with me here in the studio, Adam. I will do between now and 8. It is my time to also ask you to also join in and share your views with us on Afrobeat, the Voice of Africa Radio.
We get your views on issues, we play you the best music. This is VOAR, the Voice of Africa Radio 94 FM, the station designed to bring the best of Africa to London.
Welcome to Afrobeat, the Voice of Africa Radio. Today, the show is packed. I have in the house full. Andrew Smith is in the house from Campaign Against Armed Trade. Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Thank you for coming. What is CAT to my listeners? How would they know that CAT is an organization in the United Kingdom?
Well, CAT is Campaign Against Arms Trade. We want to stop the government from selling weapons to dictators or from selling weapons into war zones where they're going to get used on citizens. At the moment, one of the main issues we're campaigning on is UK arms sales to Israel, which the government have suggested they're going to be suspending and have now decided not to, despite the violence continuing. This is the exact sort of thing we're campaigning against because it's where British weapons are having a detrimental impact abroad.
Yes, I think the business secretary has also stated that they will do everything possible if indeed British weapons are used in Palestine to suspend some of its licenses to the corporations or companies that acquire British weapons to Israel. Don't you think it is a step in the right direction for the business secretary to have said this?
Well, it's not, because he went further than that. In fact, Vince Cable identified licenses for 12 different weapon components which he thinks have already been used in Gaza. These were like parts of tanks and drone systems which had been used in Gaza already. And at the time when he identified them, Vince Cable said that there's grounds to think all of these have been used, and if the violence continues, we're going to suspend all the licenses and stop selling these parts to Israel. That was a week ago. Since then, there has been 7 days of solid violence, and still the licenses are in place. And when we spoke to Vince Cable's department, we were told that we are monitoring the situation, and if the violence gets significant, then they will be retracted. At the moment, it is not significant.
How do we measure the significance of a violence in a war zone, in a country that has been completely razed down?
Well, precisely. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's a totally hypocritical position for the government to have. I mean, on one hand, the government talks a lot about human rights and democracy and promoting them abroad, but on the other hand is happy to sell weapons into war zones or to dictators. I mean, the UK's largest buyer for weapons is Saudi Arabia, which is seen by The Economist, Democracy Index, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch as one of the most oppressive governments on earth. These are not the sort of countries the UK should be doing business with, let alone arming.
So how are you taking your campaign, Atlanta, to stop the British government from selling these weapons to these countries?
Well, in the specific case of Israel, for example, we've been speaking to our lawyers and have actually instigated legal action against the Department of business innovation and skills because we believe they've breached their own guidelines. Even within their press releases and within their statements on arms to Israel, they've already accepted that there's a case to answer for. They've already identified weapons they think have been used against citizens. That's not Campaign Against Arms Trade identifying them, that's Vince Cable's own department. And Vince Cable's response has been incredibly weak.
But you've ever taken this kind of action and you went to court with it, the High Court asked the government to investigate BAE, where it was also reviewed in the House of Lords. So how come this time around, do you think that you'll be successful in dealing with to halt the British from selling weapons to Israel?
Well, what that example was about when the Serious Fraud Office had been investigating BAE Systems, and then the Saudi Arabia connection had been dropped after political intervention from Tony Blair. That was ridiculous. That was the government effectively stepping in to save the arms industry from the embarrassment of being dragged through the High Court. It was a total affront to democracy. And we don't want that to happen again in this situation. We think that the public are rightfully disgusted by what's been happening in Gaza. There's a widespread public opposition, and we need to mobilise that. And it's not just Campaign Against Arms Trade saying that. We've seen people like Baroness Varsay. We've even seen Nick Clegg as well. A lot of people think that it's wrong for the UK to be selling weapons into Gaza.
Nick Clegg is the Deputy Prime Minister. Can't he do much than just a mere press conference saying that, statement saying that they will also look into it and some licenses will be suspended?
Well, exactly. This is the problem. This is why people don't trust politicians, because we keep hearing time and time again about things we're going to do and then doing the exact opposite. And this is a case in hand. Only about 3 weeks ago, Nick Clegg was on television telling us that it's wrong that these weapons are being sold, and he was going to stop it if any violence resumed. And then violence, of course, has resumed. And in fact, we are seeing people dying on a daily basis. And Nick Clegg hasn't even paid it lip service over the last few days, and Vince Cable's disappearing act has been just as notable. In fact, last week we saw Vince Cable posing with pints on the set of Emmerdale, which is one thing, but at the same time as he was doing that, people were dying in Gaza, possibly from weapons which he had licensed for sales for.
Now, before I come to you, Nick Clegg's rep is in the House, Liberal Democrats.
Good evening, Bragani to Aswahali. Listen, let me just first say, I don't have the first phone line to Nick Clegg, although I would love to. I don't represent Nick Clegg. I represent my constituency of Leighton and Wanstead. And what is happening in Gaza is totally disgraceful, it's inhumane, and we need to work together. The whole British public need to unite to stop not only Gaza, but other wars from happening. And one of the ways we can is by stop the selling of weapons. And by encouraging the good in people. When someone does something good, let's encourage them. Let me finish. Let's push them a bit more. And as we know, it's not a top-kept secret how the Balfour Agreement was actually done by the Tory party and what a close link the Tory party has with Israel. It's very difficult for us because they're our senior partners, but we are the polar opposite. So we do want justice. We do want the sale of weapons, but they are senior partners. The Prime Minister of this country is a Tory one. Let's support Nick Clegg, let's support Vince Cable and encourage him more.
As the Deputy Prime Minister, and he can also effect change. The Business Secretary from Lib Dem. So why can't you do something significant by saying that, taking a bold decision, by saying that, look, enough is enough. British will not sell weapons to Israel to kill people in Palestine. We will not give Saudi Arabia, we will not sell weapons to Saudi Arabia to support Bahrainians' dictatorship. Why can't you do that?
Well, we're concentrating on Gaza, but let's remember, there are many wars across the globe and everyone has a right to life. So we'd like to see a fair playing field in arms sales. If there's a war, our arms supplies should not be going with the Prime Minister, directly with him, accompanying him on trips to sell arms supplies. Tony Blair in the 90s, when there's a war about to happen of Kashmir between Pakistan and India, not only did he not say like Nick Clegg has and Vince Cable has, his colleagues, people who accompanied him to the trip, supposedly for peace trip, were arms suppliers. So let's encourage Nick Clegg, let's encourage Vince Cable, say, look, you're saying the right things, let's turn them into action. Let's take that step forward and let's help them do so.
Well, Andrew, now the campaign, we are getting this closer to the seat of government. We are taking it further to the legal institutions to seek for legal redress to halt the British government from dealing with these so-called states that are using arms to oppress their citizens and states that are using arms to consolidate their position in a particular place, Israel. What are the necessary steps that CAD is now taking aside the legal action? How are you expanding your campaign to engulf more people to support the campaign?
Well, our campaign's been a very public one, whether it has been different protests which have been happening, or whether it's been public petitioning, which we have been doing, or whether it's been lobbying of other politicians. I think the main point to make is that we have been here before, and it was in 2009 that the then Foreign Secretary David Miliband made a statement in Parliament where he said it was almost certain UK weapons had been used in the bombardment of Gaza that year. And at the time, of course, he said much the same things as Vince Cable, that he was going to review all of these licences and he was going to look into this and make sure it never happened again. And of course, 5 years later, we're in the exact same position. So I think that we have to welcome what Nick Clegg has said, for example, but we need him to actually turn his words into action. And Vince Cable has, of course, talked a good game at times, but he is the minister in charge of the department which does arms sales. So he's not an innocent bystander. He's not an average run-of-the-mill backbencher. He is the government minister who will be signing off an awful lot of these arms sales, can veto any of them. And if he's in a position where the government are stopping him from doing that, then he knows what Baroness Barclay did, and at least what she did was very principled, and she left the government.
UKIP, would you be against supporting and selling of arms to Israel?
Well, I'm Elizabeth Jones, Vice Chairwoman of UKIP Southwark. We don't actually have a position on this, but we're a very practically minded party. Our first question would be, number one, how does this impact on Britain's bottom line? How many people, ordinary people like us, would end up unemployed as a result of those contracts being lost? How many trade links would we lose? Obviously, it's not just arms, there'd be other trade contracts involved. So what's the bottom line? Who's going to end up unemployed? Who's going to end up bankrupt? Where's the trade going to go? Let's be real about this. I think there's a lot of naivety involved in the arms trade. If we're not selling the arms, I guarantee you France will step in and be selling them. Or Italy, or Turkey, or Russia. There's a whole tiers and tiers of other countries who are more.
So would you be in a position to support or to assure the British government that the British government will sell arms but to a credible or democratic institutions rather than rogues and dictators?
Well, I don't think we can sell to rogues and dictators anyway.
But that is what is happening now. Well,
it depends how you define a rogue and dictator. And also, we have to be, we have to be very careful with foreign policy. We cannot be naive. And I think there's a lot of naivety about what is actually going on now, particularly with the issue in Iraq and Syria with ICE. We don't know, because we only hear the media, what we're meant to hear. We don't really know what complex relations are built up between Britain, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, in response to perhaps curtailing the expansion of ICE. We just don't know. And to sort of boldly make public statements about these countries, I think, is somewhat naive in the current political situation. And also, the other thing I find slightly disappointing, why is the focus always on Israel? It's always Israel, Israel, Israel. There are plenty of other countries where there are attacks on citizens. Why isn't anyone looking? Who's selling arms to the Ukrainians? Who's selling arms to the Russians? What's going on there? But no, the focus always Israel.
Well, listeners, you thought logged on to Voice of Africa, Afrobeat, the Voice of Africa radio, and it's 19 minutes after 7 o'clock. This is Inside. I'm here with Andrew, Mahmoud Faiz, and Elizabeth Jones to do discussion this evening in regards to issues that really matter most. Before we go off the arms trade, Jones, who detect what a rogue state and what a democratic country is? And why do we even deal with countries that are perceived to have bad human rights records, like Saudi Arabia? We know what is happening in Saudi Arabia. The support of Bahrainians to oppress pro-democrats demonstrators. We saw what went on in Syria, giving arms to the so-called pro-democrat to overthrow a constitutionally government. We saw what went on in Libya, proliferation of arms in Libya, and what is going on in Ukraine now, where we know the European Union and the Americans are supporting the Ukrainian government, and the other side, the Russian too, are doing their bit. What is going on, and how do we end all this supply and sales of weapons where we are not supposed to do it? And the question that was posed, twin-one, that employment. According to statistics, it's only 0.6% of British public that earns or works within the armed trade, and the amount of money that comes in, I think Kat will be able to provide us with it.
Yeah, I mean, I should say, first of all, before the employment point, on the part about who decides who's a democracy and not, rather handily the UK government compiles a report every year which is a Human Rights and Democracy report, which lists its countries of concern around the world where it has concern that the government is suppressing human rights or democracy. Last year's report listed 28 countries, and in the last 12 months the UK has sold weapons to 19 of them. So actually, even by its own standards, the UK government is failing significantly. And actually, last year alone, looking at those countries, there was over £2 billion worth of weapons sold to them. So again, using countries identified by the UK as being dictators and tyrannies, we are already seeing that there is over £2 billion worth of weapons being sold to them every year. On the employment point, the 0.6% figure isn't actually the one we've got. One we use comes from ADS, which is the trade body for the arms trade. And even using their most generous figures, the number is actually less than 0.2% of UK jobs are in arms exports. And actually, there's also estimates from different groups, CIPRI and the Oxford Research Group, that actually the arms exports trade gets a public subsidy of about £700 million a year. And actually, it'd be very hard pushed to find any industry which is of comparative size, which is that small, which gets such a high level of government support. Whether it's David Cameron flying off with arms companies to try and sell weapons, or even, for example, I was at the Farnborough International Air Show last month, which is a glorified arms fair, and it was opened by the Prime Minister, who promised £1.1 billion of extra spending on arms. And at the time, there was lots of government dignitaries, and the Foreign Secretary was there, and so on and so forth. You'd be very hard pushed to find any industry of comparative size that gets that level of political support.
Well, Andrew from CAT, we thank you very much for your time with us.
Thank you.
Afrobeat, the Voice of Africa Radio, and I hope our listeners are well pleased to have you with us this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again for joining us on the Afrobeat Voice of Africa Radio. The UKIP, United Independent Party, is unique selling point. The policy, it is best known for Britain withdrawal from European Union. But as the party has sought to broaden its appeal beyond the single issue, it has developed a full range of policies in all areas. The immigration policy, UKIP is still in the process of formulating the platform on which it will fight the next general election. But here is some of what we know so far. The immigration, they are Europe skeptical. The UKIP is Euro-skeptical. They want to get Britain out of Europe so that all policies, all laws can be done and formulated by Westminster. So Britain, job for British people, British law for British people, human right, determining who to vote or who, the prisoner, if a prisoner can vote or not, should be determined by Britain, but not Brussels or Strasbourg. I have Elizabeth Jones, woman deputy chair of SADC, with me this evening. Good evening once again and welcome.
Good evening, welcome.
Yes, your policy on immigration, whether it's perceived or not, is becoming a party that most of the ethnic minority sees is to be anti-ethnic minority. Is it true that UKIP is not in support of the existence of ethnic minority in Britain?
No, that's completely untrue. And that is a message that's put out basically to dilute our main message that we have immediate withdrawal from the EU. We don't seek to remove ourselves from Europe. We can't. We are an island of Europe. We are Europeans. We have a shared cultural history. We have a shared military history. We are Europeans. What we are seeking is to be removed from the EU. We see the EU basically as a Ponzi scheme. All it does is take money from us. We're net contributors. We're paying £55 million a day into an organisation for which we're getting very little in return. We could have that money for ourselves and invest in ourselves. And also, I don't think the public are aware of the huge amount of fraud that takes place in the EU. I can give you some examples. In 2003, there was a very famous road called the A3. It's the Calabrian coastal highway in Italy. The Italians in that area managed to get about 10 billion euros out of the EU to fund that road. It was never built. So that's 10 billion euros taken by the Italians to build a road that doesn't exist. Now, there was
wouldn't it be prudent for UKIP or any mainstream political party in Britain, their representatives in the European Parliament, to call for an investigation and to seek where those monies were sent to and why wasn't it used, rather than trying to get Britain out of EU?
It's a systemic problem. There is an organisation already within the EU called OLAF, and that investigates fraud. It did investigate the A3, and the Italians, as I said earlier, they managed to snaffle 10 billion euros in July 2012. They were ordered to pay back to the EU 300 million euros. So that's a very good rate of return on their fraud. So they get the 10 billion and they only have to pay back 300 million euros. A very, very good rate of return. Another scam in Grenada, Italy, in Calabria. There's a famous port in Calabria called Gioia Tauro. Now, this was a container port, and all the money came to build it came from the EU. That was 40 million euros to build this container port. It was going to be the great thing for Italy. It was going to help international trade. It ended up being the biggest heroin drug port into Europe, controlled by the local mafia, for the local mafia. So that's 40 million euros down the drain. Well, for our point of view, it's down the drain. For the Italian mafia in Calabria, it's quite a profitable business. So we've got Gioia Tauro, a drug port in Calabria. We have the A3 coastal road, which cost 10 billion. We actually have the Calabrian Development Fund, which that took about tens of millions of euros. I could go on and on and on. There's whole lists of frauds.
Faiz, your political party is pro-EU.
Absolutely, Adam, we are. And what you have here is a typical UKIP policy. Throw mud at it, see a mistake, there's bound to be some gullible, stupid people who believe you. Well, I'll give you an example. All these things are nothing more than accusation things. Adam, you made a point yourself. These things can be investigated. There's a maximum investigation. So it's rather like saying, well, someone's robbed a bank, let's go and, not dissolve the British Parliament.
This is a systemic process of fraud.
Let's not be rude. Let's finish, please. No, interruption is rude with the school I went to. Right. Let me tell you something.
These are facts.
We have fraud that happens in this country. Do we dissolve the British Parliament?
No, what she's saying is,
what we do is look at the fraud. Yeah. We look at the fraud. We hold people to accountable. That's it. These are just snippets of bits. Let's look at the overall picture. That's the important bit. Let's not scare people.
I could go on and on and on.
Well, I'm sure you can. I said school I went to, interruption was rude. Right. We do more business. It's funny how you keep saying take us out of Europe.
But no, out of the EU, not Europe, out of the EU.
Yeah, you can't take the EU because you have to shift the country. Right.
Well, the EU's not a country, it's a political entity, it's the European Union.
I still say interruption is rude.
Well, I want you to make the facts correct.
What she's saying is
be accurate.
Now, if I'm allowing this lady to finish, I'm sure the school she went to told her interruption is rude. I would like her to show due respect to our listeners
what we're saying
and to me,
go on with your clarification so that we can progress with this argument.
We have to look over. We do more trade in Europe than we do with American states. So why doesn't UKIP say, let's not do trade with states? No, because we do more trade with it. Millions of workers, they argue with us that millions of workers come from East Europe to work here. Of course they do. But millions of UK workers go out to work in countries like France and Europe.
But UKIP is saying that you are paying, Britain as a country is paying 55 million every day. Right. How much money do we make from the EU trade?
Right. what it is, we have to learn. It's not just about money. It's much more deeper than that. We are still paying for the cost of the First World War, the Second World War. Britain, Lib Dems believe that we are better in Europe by creating a fair society, equal society. I don't want young people dying for this country in another Third World War. I want young people to have jobs, work, a good national service, good education, and not die for this country, but let's live for this country, let's look outward, and let's stop scaremongering.
Yes, Elizabeth, he's saying that they needed job for the British people. So in Britain being part of the European Union would create more job on the streets of Britain. The young people will be getting jobs. Britain will do more business with other European nations. And other non-EU countries as well. So why must we get out of political establishments such as EU, which is bringing more countries together to form a very big market environment? Why does your party want Britain out of EU?
We want out because it's simply not profitable. It is not bringing in jobs. It's brought in a culture of zero-hour contracts. It's brought in a culture of part-timeism. It's brought in a culture of contract work. The idea of permanent employment is starting to fade away. Bob Crow actually said that himself, that not one piece of EU social legislation has created one job. And furthermore, it means that we're cut off from our traditional historical ties with the Commonwealth. For instance, I'll give you a little example. It's more difficult for a highly talented eye surgeon from Namibia to come and work in the UK than it would be for a Polish burglar. So our hands are tied with immigration. We can't choose who we have in the country. We can't think, well, hey, we want really talented people, we'll have them. We have to accept whoever turns up.
According to your party hierarchy, or you are saying that you want to introduce the Australian point system. So how would that allow somebody from Namibia or Ghana or Uganda to just come into the UK to work as a technocrat or a professional?
Well, at the moment, we've got a two-lane immigration system. We have the Free Movement Directive 2004 from the EU, which basically says that anyone from the EU has a right to turn up at the United Kingdom, a right to work here, a right of residence, and after certain conditions are complied with, certain rights to claim state benefits. That's anyone in the EU, no matter how lacking in talent, no matter if they've got criminal record, no matter, they can turn up. So we've got that, which is completely, basically a border-free situation for anyone from the EU, which is very unfair. And for the people outside the EU, like the traditional Commonwealth, who are our natural historical partners with whom we have a relationship, they're subject to the Immigration Rules 2014. Now, the Immigration Rules 2014 are similar in a way to the current Australian system. There is currently a points system. You start with Tier 1, which would be the entrepreneurs, the business investors, the exceptional talented people, the technocrats, as you mentioned earlier. They have to get a minimum of 75 points. I think they're allowed to stay now in the country 3 years. So, and then, of course, the tiers go down from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then at number 5, you have the temporary workers, youth mobility, who are allowed to stay for a maximum of about 12 months. And you have a new category now for teachers, maths teachers who can speak Mandarin. They want to bring over Chinese maths teachers. So we've got a two-tier system which is unfair and doesn't really benefit the economy. What we would want would be to have the Immigration Rules 2014, slightly amended, have the Australian system for everyone, so that we can be assured of the quality of the people coming into this country and be assured that this country can maintain social cohesion, can maintain a reasonably high level of wages, and so that our British values can be respected and maintained. After all, it's our British values that have brought us to where we are today.
Does that mean that with your policies of Britishness, multiculturalism or multicultural society will be abandoned or will be phased out in Britain? Well,
it depends how you define multiculturalism. Now, for me personally, my absolute UKIP idol is Freddie Mercury. Right, okay? He was born in Zanzibar, he's a Farsi, and he was gay. So he came to the United Kingdom, reached a certain level of talent in the music industry, which was absolutely outstanding, became a world player, fine. fantastic. Any country would be glad to have him. He's an absolute epitome of British talent in my view. Similarly, George Michael, half English, half Greek Cypriot, again gay. Sorry to emphasise the gay, but I'm just saying that we are accepting of all talents from everywhere. Now, with regard to multiculturalism, we are a multicultural nation anyway. In 1 BC, the Romans turned up. 5 AD, the Anglo-Saxons turned up. 8 AD, the Vikings turned up. 1066, the Normans turned up. The Huguenots turned up. The Indians turned up. In the 18th century, as I'm sure you're aware, Adam, 15,000 Africans came to the United Kingdom. And in fact, they were well featured. Hogarth made many cartoons of the Africans who came here. And in fact, there's a very famous one called Francis Barber, who was in fact Dr. Samuel Johnson's butler, and he was in fact a beneficiary of Dr. Samuel Johnson's will. So we have a very, very long history of taking in people, of asylum, of ideas. And also, we want to keep up our intellectual prowess in this country, okay? When you look at the Nobel Prize winners, the Nobel Prize rankings are, number one, America, with about 300 Nobel Prize winners every year. Number two, it's us. I think we're about 180. Please forgive me if the figures are wrong. Number three, it's Germany. So although we've got a smaller population, we are, I would say, amongst one of the most intellectually creative nations in the world. And we want to keep that up. We want to keep that momentum up.
Faiz, Britain, a small island with multiple of people, multiple of culture, but the policy of the immigration policies of these various political parties, the UKIP, the Conservative, the Labour, and the Liberal Democrat, has now been changed or is being changed under the influence of UKIP immigration policy. The winning of most of the European, the election gone. The performance of the UKIP has redesigned British politics in terms of immigration policies.
Right, first of all, what you have to understand about UK is that it's the press in the country. We have a left-wing press and a right-wing press. So obviously the UKIP is the right of Tory. The Tories were so not basket cases that the Tory party won't have them, so they'll join the UKIP. Yeah, that's their foreign policy. Second, if I could just go back a step, is that earlier what Elizabeth said, she made some very good points I agree with. She sort of said about arms trade, that if we don't sell arms trade, we don't sell it, somebody else will sell it. I'll tell you what, if a policeman nicks a drug seller on the corner of the street, Francis Road here, he does say, policeman, please, if I don't sell this guy drugs, someone else will. What a stupid argument. Holds no water whatsoever. The second one, she said, if we don't sell arms, someone will. That's right, she's right. France, Germany, other countries will. That's why we have an EU directive. That's why we need the European Parliament. That's it, because then we say everybody to dictate a country, look, Europe's not going to supply you up. Germany want, France want, Italy want, Lithuania want, Poland want. Many countries across Europe, 28 countries, will not supply you. That makes him catch. So if anything, Elizabeth actually, some of the things she said are probably them pro-Europe. Let's work together. Let's not work against one another. That's how we move forward. On immigration, she said about the Commonwealth and the East Europeans. Radio listeners can't tell President, but I'm actually brown colour. And quite often I'll see people say, well, I'm not racist at all. I mean, the black people, they've been here for a year. The Asians, they've been here for a year. But these East Europeans, I'll tell you, I can't stand them. No. So from the 18th century, as Elizabeth says, immigrants have come to this country. They built the country. This country is what it is, what's made it. The transport, the national health, all of these things could not have been built if it wasn't for my and your forefathers. It was good enough for my father to come here and work hard and build Britain. It's good enough for an East European. Let's not try and turn immigrant as immigrant, and let's not these political parties turn worker against worker.
But UKIP is saying that they would bring control to uncontrolled immigration into the United Kingdom. What is wrong with that?
Well, there's nothing wrong when you say on the face of it, but you saw the colours straight through Elizabeth. What did she say? Oh, yeah. Our longer ties are not with East Europeans, who are quite easy to pick on because they're new immigrants. They're with the Pakistanis, the Indians, the West Indians. Do you know why? Because they live longer in this country. So when she says that, the white person thing is going, no, excuse me, I have a neighbour, he's perfectly fine, he works hard, I'm not going to turn against him. But he sees a new face coming to the street, a Romanian thinks, oh my God, she's right. Britain's coming to an end. Our culture will end. Everything will end. You saw the true face. She said about intellectual. Is she now saying that more immigrants come to the country, Britain will actually get stupid? Because that's what she said. When she said about the Nobel Peace Prize, the true racist colour of the UKIP are showing through, they're slipping through, and they're showing clearly.
Elizabeth, accusations from mainstream media, mainstream political party that UKIP is bigot, a political party of bigots, racist, and above all, they want Britishness, which will isolate the Muslim migrant in Britain, an ethnic minority in Britain. How true is this?
It's completely untrue. I just mentioned earlier about, I accept that we've had a very mixed history. Of course we have. I mentioned that one of the great, for me, the absolute UKIP idol for me is Freddie Mercury.
So why is it that the policy of UKIP is not appealing to the ethnic minority in Britain
It is appealing to many of the ethnic minorities. We have a significant ethnic minority membership. Now, let's be frank here. The key to the immigration debate is whether actually we have any control over our borders or not. And we don't. The other key to the immigration debate, that's the main one, the other key to the immigration debate, again, I'm a very practical person, is always bottom line. Now, the National Audit Office has assessed, because of the vast increase in British population, because of immigration, that we will need 240,000 new primary school places every year. We need 90,000 new primary school places every year in London, and this is solely because we have an open borders policy with Europe. We also need 232,000 new homes every year, again, because of the open door policy with Europe. And in Chelsea and Westminster, in 1 month, someone did a survey, and they found that there were mothers from 72 different nations in 1 month in Chelsea and Westminster giving birth at a cost of $1,800 per birth. So it's a huge strain on our systems. It's a huge strain on our schools, the NHS, and this is not to do with natural. It's not an organic event that's come from our nation.
But
it's been enforced on it by the EU.
Research has shown that the ethnic minorities or migrants who have come to UK are taking less than what they give to the country. So wouldn't it be prudent to allow migrants in the United Kingdom to work and support the economy?
Well, that's exactly what we want. We want the very best migrants we can get. That's exactly what we want.
First, they want the very best migrant that they can get from India, Africa, Poland, and Lithuania. What's wrong with that? If
there's absolutely nothing wrong. The migrants, we already have that. The migrants we have in this country, the Centre for Research and Analysis on Migrants. You see, this is where scaremongering. People scaremonger, pick figures out. Statistics and damn what is it? The Centre for Research and Analysis, University College in London, found that migrants from 88 countries of Central Eastern Europe, who are the favourites for the UKIP to pick on, was 60% less likely than native Britons to claim benefits. 58% less likely to live in council housing. That's because they're generally people who want to come to this country, earn some money, they're younger, they can be more healthy, they can work longer, and they've come here to work, so they're more likely to work. So, in a matter of fact, we're already reaping benefits of immigration. But I will say this, it needs to be a natural one. What's happened now, you see, is that a lot of the things that the last government did, the new government's getting blamed for. For example, they did say that only 13,000 immigrants would come in from East Europe, when in actual fact it was 170,000. But you can't hold the Liberal Democrats for the failures of Labour. You have to hold Labour for the failures of Labour in the last government.
So you support the absolute control of the British borders, if that is what you are saying?
Depends what you mean. Right. For example, if I think Sir Mayor of Godbury in what happened when the Labour government came in, we actually used to count people in and count people out. But we don't actually count people out, we only count people in.
But Lib Dem is saying that they would want...
We'll bring that in so that we actually know who's coming, who's going out. Then you have a helicopter view, a real statistics we could talk about. Still just picking statistics out of the air. If we don't know how many people are going out of the country, how do we know how many immigrants are in this country? It's a ridiculous debate to do without having the facts at hand.
Well, listeners, you still tune into Afrobeat, the voice of Africa radio. It's getting hot. The UKIP and Lib Dems, whenever they meet, the clash of the titans, they're changing the paradigm of the British politics. Thanks to Nigel Farage. Let's go home or go home.
And Nick Clegg. I'm going to thank Nick Clegg as well.
Go home or else we'll grab you and take you home. The recent billboard posted by the Conservative government, which we all know was an influence by the UK immigration policy that is changing things. I have a neutral personnel in the studio. Andrew, the UK policy on immigration as well as Lib Dems.
Well, first thing I should say is nothing I'm saying is representative of CAT in the slightest. CAT has no position on any of these issues.
As an electorate.
Yeah, I think that the politics of UKIP is the sort of politics of dog whistle, tabloid scaremongering, which has been around forever. And it was initially, it would have been about Catholics, it would have been about Jewish people in the 30s. It's all the stuff which builds up and is this horrible cesspool of terrible language and horrible insinuations. And Nigel Farage, I remember going on radio talking about how he'd rather live next to a German than a Romanian, and he knew exactly where he was going with it. It's a horrible politics. In terms of what credit I would give UKIP is 2 points actually, which is that considering they don't have a single MP, they've done more to shift government policy than arguably Nick Clegg has, and he's Deputy Prime Minister. But I'd also say that I'm from up north in Scotland, and we're having a referendum on Scottish independence at the moment. And one thing which has been very positive about referendums, it's got a lot of people actually talking about the issues and really focusing on it. And I think actually an EU referendum, I think, would be a good step forward on the grounds that there isn't a public consent for the EU. I personally would vote to stay in, but I accept that that hasn't been put to my generation. It's not really been put to anybody since the 1970s, and the EU, which was voted on then, is very different from the EU of today. So I think actually One thing which I think UKIP are reflecting is there is a public mood to be consulted on it.
Well, that is Andrew, his personal view on this issue, but not as a rep of CAT, Campaign Against Arms Trade. Elizabeth, whistleblowing, scaremongering, tabloid type, and causing scare amongst the British people that, look, when we allow all these people to come in, they are coming to get our jobs. We will end up being relegated to the background. We will lose our homes. Our children will not get places in schools. Hospitals will be problems. Our transportation system, everything is going. As a matter of fact, the migrants coming in. So UKIP, in coalition with any of the political parties, what do you think your policy on immigration will be as far as ethnic minority or EU members are concerned?
Well, I think I've already explained that at the moment we have a two-tier immigration system.
So you're going to base on that?
No, we want to have the Australian style. We would want the Australian style immigration system, which is similar to the immigration rules 2014 that are in place now. They're not dissimilar from that. That's what we want in order to ensure that we get the best talent coming to this country, that this country can maintain its intellectual prowess in the world. And also, you have to understand that there's very much, we've talked much about, having open borders with Europe, how great it's been, but it hasn't really. You've got to think also about other issues such as social cohesion. Now, let's look at the prison population. That's 85,000 prison population. 29% of that is from overseas. The majority is from Poland, Jamaica and Ireland. And also, again, if you break that down into religious stats, 50% of the current inmates are Christian, and the population at the moment is 60% Christian. The second biggest religious group is Muslim. They're 13% of the prison population, where in fact they are 4% of the national population. So we've got issues with regard to
why all these? What are the causes of all these?
I really don't know what the causes are. I cannot possibly comment. I know I'm not saying I'm a criminologist. I'm just giving you the stats, and also the idea that because we've got open borders, it means everyone who turns up is working. There are 600,000 EU nationals in this country who are not working at all. They're claiming full benefits. And furthermore, when we do get the open border people turning up and perhaps be working part-time, they're claiming in-work benefits. They'll be claiming child benefit, child tax credit, working tax credit, housing benefit, council tax rebate. So it is a big drain to us. It's a loss to us. We just don't need the EU. We were one of the greatest trading powers up to our 1972 when we joined the EU. Thereafter, all of a sudden, history has completely rewritten itself, and now it appears that we simply cannot cope on our own. Of course we can cope on our own. We can do very, very well. This country can do a lot better outside the EU. We simply don't need it. It's a waste of money. It's a Ponzi scheme. It encourages organised crime, and we do not want to be party to it. And furthermore, if I can go back to border control, yes, I'm sorry, we have a very, very big issue at the moment with Islamic State and the returnees. Some people say they're 500, some people say they're 2,000. I understand that 250 such people have already returned to the United Kingdom. We have no trace.
Isn't it incumbent upon the government to discourage Muslim youth from Britain to attending this kind of training camps in Syria and other places, then go and get toughened up and come back to England? Because when it started in Syria, we heard people saying that, authorities saying that, no, we need to fight Assad, but we will not commit soldiers. We will support in kinds and in arms and training. We will support in money. So if you are saying that, the British Muslim boy who has no job, who say that if my government is saying he's going to support in kinds and in money, in training, I better go there and support the cause of my government to fight overthrow Assad. Isn't it wrong on our government to make such utterances and statements?
It's quite a complex psychological issue. I mean, I don't know if it should in fact be the families. We don't know exactly what is causing the youngsters to go to Iraq. I really don't know. That needs to be some significant investigation. However, I am going to pull it back to the EU, and the Prince's Trust, and I think it was about May of this year, completed a survey about youth unemployment. There is significant youth unemployment, and the Prince's Trust found that about a third of long-term youth unemployment are suffering mental health issues, depression. So again, it's unemployment. And if we had control over our own borders, we did not have an open border system, I'm sure perhaps many of these young men would have jobs and would think they've got a career, they could perhaps start a family and finance themselves, and perhaps that would give them some hope.
Faiz,
let me just take stage by saying,
why do you think we should stick to
I'll tell you
EU?
what, this is laughable and a joke, isn't it, really? Let's be serious. Let's treat the listener of this radio say with some intellect and then the intelligent listeners.
But I hope we are treating them with intellect and intelligence.
I said that this was scaremongering, and it's proven itself again. Oh my God, all the princes are full of all foreigners. There's no British. Well, one thing she's forgotten, yes, Christian religion is the biggest in Britain. Second is Muslims. So naturally, you'd get more Muslims. First would be second Muslim. And then we got the Jamaican. Earlier on, Elizabeth said Jamaicans are welcome to the West and we'll have a tier system. We've got nothing against them. All of a sudden, our princes are full of them and we don't want them. What a ridiculous comments to make.
But
I never said that.
Second of all, but that's what you're implying.
No, I'm not.
Second of all, she said about EU can come in, a criminal can come in, a rapist, a murderer.
Well, they
can come in, well, actually, you're wrong. Because if any country, EU is a criminal who runs over to Britain can hand them back without even a court case. Say, for example, someone does something in France. It gets on a boat through the Eurostar, comes to Britain, all friends go to pick up the phone and say, look for Mr. So-and-so. He's got a Eurostar. He's in your border.
Are they checked at the borders? Are they checked at the borders upon entry to the country?
Yes, they do.
No, I'm referring to people who have a long criminal record. They may not be arrested. They have a criminal record.
Right. The school I went to did say interrupt.
No, what she's saying is she's making a point.
Yes, but she needs to wait her turn. Right. Now, let me tell you, they cannot stop you. But when you turn up, you show your passport, you justify who you are, and you can come in. When a criminal shows his passport, it's collared, put into a van, sent straight back to the country where he would have committed a crime if it's a member of the EU. So if anything, criminals are actually being stopped. Before the EU, if someone in Lithuania or Romania committed a crime, they managed to get to Britain, there's nothing Romania could do about it. Now they can pick up the phone, problem solved, back to Romania or a prison in the UK.
She's made a point why Britain should be out of the European Union, because we're spending money on some members of European Union who will come to Britain and will not work, stay home, get tax rebate, cancel tax, everything they get for free.
Adam, all you're doing is...
Your point is, why should Britain be part of EU?
because there's people, say for example, we said, oh my God, there's a shortage of school. It's all due to this nasty experience. Actually, no. If you go back, the government in the 70s said people having less children and we need less schools, and invested less in schools. And all of a sudden, the government got its figures wrong. We don't build enough schools. So in matter of fact, if anything, we need these European builders to come over and build a school that cracked the mistake of our previous government.
Well, we're still on this issue. With me in the studio, Elizabeth Jones, Mahmoud Faiz, and Andrew Smith of CAT is here with us as an independent person for now in this matter of immigration policies of the various political parties. We had wanted to discuss the upward trend of the UKIP in voting and donations. However, time wouldn't permit us because we are running far behind time now. So before we go, Elizabeth, ethnic minorities in the United Kingdom, those who are listening to us today,
yes,
at Newham and beyond, what are you telling them? That UKIP is not a party of bigots,
no,
racist,
no,
and Islamophobic, and
no,
all sort of bad things that are perceived by the press and some people within Britain? What are you telling them? That this perception, they should just dash it and listen to you?
They should dash this perception. This perception has been put about in order to shut up the message that we should leave the EU. UKIP says we should leave the EU. I mean, look at the African contribution to this country has been fantastic. Look, you've got Didier Drogba, Michael Essien, Yo-Yo Toure, Desmond Tutu, John Sentamu, Idris Elba, Seal. You know, these have made fantastic contribution. These are the ideal people you'd want anyone would want them in their country. I mean, of course, it's absolute nonsense. They would be welcome. They would fly through the point system.
Faiz, the presence of Adam Audu, Didier Drogba, David, and
Adam, let's go back to the 60s and 70s. There would have been National Front sitting here saying, "Oh yeah, they're fine, but we don't want the West Indians and the Asians over." It's the same message repeating itself. Read between the lines. You're okay if you're this, but not that. You're okay with this if you're not that. No. Let us people of Britain not be divided on colour, creed and religion. Let's stick together, work together, send a strongman UKIP as we've sent it to the BNP, the National Front, the Black Shirts, all of these organisations. You're not wanted, you're not needed. We are a multicultural society and we made Britain what it is.
We'll make Britain what it is. Andrew, on campaign against arms trade, your message to the British government and most of the European government in terms of trading with countries that we think they are not democratic enough and they are oppressors, and who sell, when they get their hands on arms, will be distributing it or using it in a way that doesn't support human rights.
If the UK is going to talk about human rights and democracy, then it has to practice what it preaches. So you can't talk about human rights and democracy at the same time as arming tyrants and dictators. It's completely and utterly inconsistent. The UK can't wash its hands when UK weapons are used to suppress people, as they have been in Libya, as they have been in Egypt, as they have been in Bahrain, and as they are being in Gaza right now.
Well, listeners, I thank you very much for your time with us on Afrobeat, the voice of Africa Radio. I thank Elizabeth Jones of UKIP, Mahmoud Faiz of Liberal Democrat, and Andrew Smith of Campaign Against Armed Trade. My name is Adam Audu. Same time next week in the studios of Voice of Afrobeat 94, the voice of Africa Radio. Catch us same time next week.